My name is Alyssa, and I'm 30 years old. A few years ago, my mom looked at me and said, "You ruined this family." She didn't say it quietly. She said it at the dinner table, in front of everyone. And no one stopped her. For a second, I thought maybe she didn't mean it the way it sounded. Maybe it just came out wrong. But then I looked around the table, and no one looked surprised. Not my dad, not my sister. No one. That's when I realized this wasn't something she said in the moment. This was something they all believed. Growing up, I was never the daughter they were proud of. My sister was the one they talked about. She had a stable job, a clear path, a life that made sense to them. I didn't. I was trying to build something on my own. Something that didn't look impressive at first. Something that needed time. But to them, it just looked like I was doing nothing. At first, they asked questions. Then the questions turned into comments. And eventually, the comments turned into judgment. It wasn't loud in the beginning. It was small things. The way they compared me to my sister. The way they avoided talking about me when people asked what I was doing. The way the room would go quiet when my future came up. I noticed it. I just chose to ignore it. Because I thought, if I kept working, if I stayed focused, things would eventually change. But they didn't. That night, we were all sitting at the table like it was any normal dinner. No argument. No warning. Just a simple conversation about what I was doing with my life. I tried to explain. I told them I was working on something. That things were starting to come together. That I just needed a little more time. But my mom didn't let me finish. Her expression changed. And then she said it. "You ruined this family." Everything went quiet. No one reacted. No one corrected her. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't fully accepted before. This wasn't frustration. This wasn't temporary. This was how they saw me. For a few seconds, no one said anything. I was still sitting there, trying to understand how a normal conversation had turned into this. I looked at my dad, expecting him to say something. He didn't. He just stayed quiet. Looking down at the table like this had nothing to do with him. That was the moment it really hit me. Because if he wasn't going to say anything, then he agreed with her. I tried to explain, not to argue, just to be understood. I told them I was working, that I had plans, that things were starting to move in the right direction. But it didn't matter. They weren't listening. It was like they had already decided who I was, and nothing I said was going to change that. Then my mom spoke again. "If you're not going to take your life seriously," she said, "then you don't need to stay here." I didn't respond right away. I just sat there, looking at her, waiting for her to take it back. She didn't. My dad still didn't say anything. My sister didn't even look at me. And that's when I realized this wasn't a threat. They meant it. I stood up slowly. No one stopped me. No one asked me to sit back down. I walked to my room and closed the door. For a few minutes, I just stood there, not moving. It didn't feel real, but at the same time, it made sense. Things had been building up to this for a long time. I started packing, not because I had a plan, but because I knew I didn't have a choice. I didn't take much, just the things I needed. When I walked back out with my bag, they were still sitting at the table, like nothing had happened. I paused near the door for a second, not expecting anything, but still hoping. No one said a word, so I opened the door and left. That night, I walked out of my parents' house with nothing, and they didn't try to stop me. The first few months were the hardest, not because I didn't have a place to stay, but because I didn't have anything else. No support. No backup plan. Just me, trying to figure things out. I stayed with a friend at first, just a small room. Nothing special, but it was enough. Enough to start over. I didn't talk to my family. They didn't reach out either. It was like I had just disappeared from their lives. At the beginning, I questioned everything. Maybe they were right. Maybe I really was wasting my time. Maybe I should have just followed the path they wanted. But every time I thought about going back, I remembered that night, the way she said it, the way no one stopped her, and that was enough to keep me moving forward. I started working more seriously, long hours, late night, learning things on my own. There was no one guiding me, no one checking if I was okay, but there was also no one doubting me anymore, and that made a difference. Slowly, things started to change. Not all at once, just small wins, a project that actually worked, a client that came back, money that was enough to cover my expenses. It wasn't impressive, not yet, But it was real, and it was mine. For the first time, I felt like I was actually building something, instead of just trying to prove something. Months turned into a year, then more time passed, and without realizing it, I stopped thinking about them every day. I stopped needing their approval. I stopped trying to explain myself in my head, because my life was finally moving forward without them. And then one day, something happened that I didn't expect. I heard from someone who knew my family. They were asking about me. For the first time, they wanted to know what I was doing. At first, I didn't respond, not because I didn't care, but because I didn't feel the need to. For a long time, I had wanted them to notice me, to ask about me, to understand what I was trying to do. Now that they finally were, it felt different. Too late. A few days later, I heard more. They weren't just asking about me. They were confused. They didn't understand how I had managed on my own, how I was supporting myself, what I was actually doing. And for the first time, they didn't have answers. I did. But I didn't rush to explain. I didn't call them. I didn't go back. I just kept living my life the way I had been. Working, building, moving forward. Eventually, my mom reached out. A simple message, asking how I was. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an acknowledgement of what happened. Just a question. I looked at it for a while before replying. Not because I was angry, but because I was deciding what it meant to me now. I kept it simple. I'm doing well. That was it. No details, no explanation, because I didn't owe them that anymore. After that, there were a few more messages, careful ones, like they didn't know how to talk to me anymore. And in a way, they didn't, because I wasn't the same person who had walked out of that house. Back then, I was still trying to prove something. Now, I didn't need to. They had called me a disappointment. They had told me I ruined the family. But the truth was, I just chose a different path, and I stayed on it. Without them, I never went back to that house.